Let's go!
Finally have an opportunity here to chat about Mortal Kombat 1 and to give some final thoughts, because after Summer Games Fest we played MK1. I did not feel like we had an exact understanding or grasp of how the game even is with the very limited time frame we had with it, right? And the nice part is that, yeah, I'm still pretty excited about MK1 in general, because the things that will eventually be added to the game, I think, could for sure open up a lot of stuff. But I obviously have some concerns based on playing the beta. And now that we have a bit more concise time, we have like 10-ish hours of putting in time to a couple of characters and a few cameos into Mortal Kombat 1. I'm a bit more confident with how I feel about the game. The nice part is that I can say with confidence that Mortal Kombat 11 was a game that I felt like you could figure out, and we did figure out really fast. Even in the very first playable experience there was for it after it was revealed, within like 30 to 60 minutes, I felt like we figured out what MK11 was. And was there much more to it? It turned out there wasn't. It kind of was that, and it was a much more methodical, slowed down Mortal Kombat game that didn't give the characters a lot of options, and all those options were split up in the variation system, and none of the variations that were there seemed interesting. The nice part is that all changed in MK11 over time. They did make it faster, opened up the variations. They eventually did the stuff that I complained about for years, which is like, hey, you need to allow us to pick variations. And they did that, which was, you know, it was really cool to see MK11 eventually come around to all the stuff that I thought was kind of like annoying in the game. That just made me not like it personally. Although, granted, I still think one of the best Mortal Kombat games there is content-wise, and probably one of the best looking fighting games ever, period. So that leads us to Mortal Kombat 1. And the nice part is, in the first 30-60 minutes, I don't feel like we had a grasp of this game at all, because there's just way too much. There's way too many new mechanics, there's way too many new systems. But there was something that was pretty familiar with MK1 to MK11, and that's overall the way the game feels. And it definitely feels like the bones of the game are MK1 at heart. You would think that it's like a completely different game, like through and through, that feels different, like the way MK9 felt to MKX. But no, this kind of reminds me of a lot of like the PS2 eras of Mortal Kombat games had like upgrades, right? You had your like Deadly Alliance and your Armageddons and your, you know, all the different titles in between. It felt like with those games, when you upgraded from one game to the next, MK11 to MK1 feels like that, where it's like, oh yeah, if we're going from, you know, Deception and Deadly Alliance and the differences between these games, it kind of feels that way. What you do 90% of the time in Mortal Kombat games is neutral, right? You're doing neutral and special moves and stuff, and MK1 definitely feels like MK11 in that regard. However, there's a lot of like really great things about the game that I'm genuinely excited for. I think the cameo system is super interesting. It is something that you have to figure out, and I absolutely love that. The cameos that are in the game right now are weird because they fulfill very specific roles, and I think technically Kano is the most interesting cameo, because at the end of it, Sonya is really good for like a combo extension, and that's mostly it. At the end of it, like Sonya's ring assist and her, you know, grab you with the legs assist aren't good. And I think the ring assist leaves you at +1, but you're really far away, so it doesn't really seem worth it as a projectile. And that's because a couple of cameos you can't just use, right? You have to, like, your character steps out of the way and the other character has to come in. You're unable to play the game while the cameo is doing something, which I think is a bit odd that you have such little control in those situations. Leg grab gives you a combo extension, but I don't feel like the combo extension is as good as the square wave one in general, because square wave doesn't limit your character. You can move around and such. I still personally, I think the cameo system is good, and it does open up the game a lot, and Kano does allow you to have more neutral options of things that you can do, which is where I think Mortal Kombat 1 is going to get a lot of its fun at. I can't help but wish it was kind of like MK11, where in MK11, if you had these assists in the towers and stuff, you can do them whenever. You got 3 of them, and it was very fun. It was crazy to see how much it changed the game, and you could call them whenever, during jumps, during attacks, during anything. Like the freedom of ability for you to call assists was kind of matching that of other assist-based fighting games and tag fighting games, which was really sick. I'm like, oh, damn. This doesn't feel like it's fleshed out, and it clearly is broken, so it needs some work. However, the cameo system in MK1 is pretty specific in kind of how you want to utilize them. So I kind of wish you had a bit more free-flowing options of how to use the cameos in general. I really wish that was the case, man. Because it feels like sometimes they're really good for a specific thing, and that's kind of about it. Some of the ones that you can call at any time, that's actually fun to be able to do this stuff. But the other ones just feel like, oh, we're just gonna, you know, the game kind of slows down a whole bunch here. You can't use your character while this was happening. You know, you enter a pose, and you just have to watch it happen. So I'd like to see cameos used for more things outside of just combo extensions, is what I'm trying to say. But that's another good part of the game, is the combos, right? The combos are crazy fun. And I do love the fact that characters, even without cameos, get a lot more combo options. We've already seen some absolutely bonkers stuff with Sub-Zero. Maybe not as much Katana. I don't feel like I've seen Katana doing setups, but I've seen Sub-Zero, Kenshi, and Liu Kang doing absolutely wild shit in the corner. And it's like, goddamn, those combos are hype as fuck, dude. Especially when you get in the corner, they do some ridiculously cool looking stuff. So if the concern that you had was like, man, I wanted MK11, I liked MK11, but I wanted combos, I think you're going to love MK1. You're going to absolutely love this game. If combos is what you wanted out of MK11 specifically, this game delivers in every single regard, and we only have 3 cameos. We don't even have the access to see all the other crazy shit. I think there's going to be a huge breadth of options there, which is going to make the game genuinely interesting to figure out what the hell's going on. However, I can't help but go over some of my my caveats with the game, because I'm going to talk about gameplay stuff. We already know the game looks amazing, right? The visuals are on another level, and I like the presentation. I think the fatalities look great. All that shit is amazing, but it's kind of surface level. I kind of want MK1 to be a game that I want to come back to and play for 10 years, similar to, you know, classic Mortal Kombat's, if not MKX. The game is obviously slow, right? The grounded movement, the mobility, the speed of strings in the game, I think are the slowest that I've ever seen in like a Mortal Kombat game in a very long time. Like going all the way back to early PS2 old school 2D games. And I thought I was crazy. I'm like, this game definitely feels faster than MK11. It feels like a bit faster. MK11 was my initial impression. And then we went and fired up MK11 footage, and I was like, okay, so how fast is MK11? Because it's been a while since I've played this. It looked like I was looking at Mortal Kombat 1 at 1.25 speed. I'm not shitting you. I was like, dude, I do not remember MK11 being this fast. And where is the speed? Where is the game getting all this like crazy fast speed from? MK11 was fast because the combo strings and the attacks were significantly fast. I was like, damn, dude, I was not ready for MK1 to make MK11 look like a really fast game, because it kind of does. Obviously, the speed in MK1 and the nuttiness of the game is the cameo system and how you're going to utilize the cameos, and I think combos have a pretty decent speed in MK1. I actually like them a lot. But all the stuff that happens in the game outside of that, between jumping and moving and throwing and dashing and everything of how you conduct your character in MK1 at this point of the stress test, I don't feel like it is slow specifically, and I really enjoy the combos. I personally feel it's kind of bad, and there's a couple of reasons behind that. There's a lot of input delay in MK1, and it feels like there's even more than previous games like MK11. I can't help but think that most of the negative impressions people have of MK1's like movement, mobility, speed, doing specials, all that kind of stuff boils down to the fact that release check is on by default. There's a lot of input delay caked into the game. There's 3 extra frames of input delay caked into online, and it's making everything just feel really sluggish. On top of the fact that you can't dash cancel out of your dashes. The dashes don't move at all. The walk speed kind of feels like fast in general. It's kind of okay, but jumps are super floaty and like really slow. All these things sort of like build up, and it's like, oh man, like it feels like it's the slowest Mortal Kombat I've played. So, but it's a funny thing because they're trying to do something that a fighting game has never done. I have never seen a big fighting game run at the speed that Mortal Kombat 1 does and have combos as long as it does. Most fighting games that have really long combos are generally like kind of fast at a fast-paced breakneck speed that have you making a lot of decisions, and you also have to land your big combo after that. This is a really interesting game where like you have a game that runs at the speed of something like a classic MK2, like literally a grounded walk speed of that, but then I get the hit and I do a Marvel versus Capcom combo. You know, it's kind of fucking crazy. I think that's a wild decision for a fighting game to have that speed that it does, and to land as long of a combo as you do after it. It's definitely an interesting decision. I'm still on not a deciding verdict for a lot of things in MK1, but I can confidently say, based on what we played with this stress test, my initial impression that we played for at Summer Games Fest, when the game was pretty fun, but it felt slow, is still carried over to this version of the game. It feels slow, and that could be a game that a lot of people are really looking forward to. A game that's like MK11 with much longer combos, beautiful visuals, but runs at a slower pace so you can kind of understand what's happening, might be the perfect fighting game for a lot of people. But it is the exact opposite that I thought they would go with Mortal Kombat after MK11 was already considered a really slow fighting game, like in general. So ultimately, like I don't think a lot of the other elements in the game, like the cameo stuff, is specifically bad. I think it needs to be tuned a little bit. I think there needs to be a bit more options and freedom in that regard. The big thing that brings it down for me is the neutral, is the movement. And ultimately, the neutral and movement just kind of carry out exactly like MK11 did. And it's MK11, but at a slower pace. You know what I mean? Ultimately, what I'm looking forward to is other characters and cameos. I'm looking forward, if the game is going to remain this same way and it's not going to change, I think that the interesting parts of the game are going to open up with cameos and shit. It really will. And how all these other cameos utilize, and if you can use them for mobility or do all this kind of stuff, that is going to seem really cool. I personally would absolutely trade longer combos for really interesting neutral and mobility. Like player expression through how you pilot your character around the screen is always a more interesting thing to me personally. Combos are fun, and I always go to combos because obviously I'm a content creator and that's what people like seeing. But what makes fighting games truly last a long time is what you do in between the combos. And what happens in between the combos? That is like 85 to 90% the matches you play. Like the majority of the time you play a fighting game, it's not doing combos. It's all the stuff you're doing to get to the combo. And is that interesting? Is there enough defensive and offensive options that you can counterweigh and balance in between to make that an interesting thing? And it's the one thing that I really hope changes about MK1 from now till launch. We've seen some of the highest level competition of the game. I've been watching their streams. Everyone says the game feels sluggish. All the people are like, man, can you add a run button to this shit? No. This is not a run button fighting game. That's a whole stamina system. Don't worry about that shit. You're not getting MKX again, right? However, there is dashes, and the dashes are so bad right now, they're practically useless. So I think what you can do is actually make them super good. Actually, the game can be sped up by dashes. The game can be sped up in several other ways that are outside of what we're seeing right now. To me, I have no issue if the game comes out and it's like this. It is the way it is. I'm not going to alter the development of the game if it's a slower, more methodical MK11. I think that's completely fine. I'll just hope that there's a character in the game that does speed up the game to a point where I think it's like super fun and really engaging. But as of right now, I hope they listen to most of the competitive players that have been complaining about this, because it feels like they do listen to the competitors a lot. They listen to what Sonic Fox and all these high-level players are saying, because all of them are complaining about mobility right now. And yes, it does feel very weighted and very sluggish. So it'll be interesting to see how much will change with it, what characters they add, what crazy, how much cameos will really be a disruptor to all this, like, you know, slower movement and stuff like that, if it does stay this way. So either way, I'm very excited for that. Actually, I am. I think the cameo stuff is, and what will be available and how many cameos there are, will be dramatic disruptors to how the game is played. I just personally hope it speeds up a little bit, and we need to feel like our characters are really responding a lot faster on the ground. And that's about it. I wasn't expecting to get MKX again. I really wasn't. I just kind of wanted a team game that feels really you know, interesting and crazy. And the big thing I hope is the neutral changes to sort of accompany how crazy the cameos actually are.